Welcome to the SoulSeekR podcast. I'm your host, Sam Kabert. I started this pod back in 2019 when I was taking my first steps on the path of remembering. And at the time, the tagline for the show was a journey of self-discovery. A year later, it became a journey of remembering. Yet, what I know now is back then, I was still seeking. And what I've come to know now is that it's the journey of seeking that brings us the silent, slow stillness of acceptance. And therein lies our own innate wisdom. It's my mission now to eradicate the glorification of hustle culture, as it was my drive in entrepreneurship that led to a greater whole, and that's because I was outsourcing my sovereignty rather than looking within. So let this be your invitation to take a deep breath in and remember that at any time we can shift our thoughts and our feelings to create the outer world in which we wish to live. Soul Seekers, it's time to grow. Let's go. What is up, fam? It is your host, Sam Kabert, as always. And in this episode of the SoulSeekR podcast, we are going deep about all the things from demonology. Is that the right term? I don't even know. It's not even something I'm into. To archangels and angels and Kundalini. I mean, we don't really talk about Kundalini that much, but everything that we're talking about in this episode is based off of Kundalini awakening. It's literally, here's what it is. This awakening unfolding, this awakening process, this spiritual journey, so often what it really is about is awakening the Kundalini within. There's this beautiful, beautiful mythology, and that goes that there are the two lovers, the two Hindu gods and goddesses, and that is Shiva and Shakti. And Shakti, we can think of her as kind of like Kali. I think a lot of people are more familiar with Kali rather than Shakti, but it's that similar Kali type energy. Well, Kali sits at your root chakra, and her lover Shiva is at your third eye. And it's said that when Shiva, that's the male, he sits at the third eye, wakes up to his I amness, meaning that kind of profound experience of a spiritual awakening of, wow, I am the creator of the universe, and everything around me and everything that I see and interact with is a reflection of me and is me reflecting back to me. WTF, what does that even mean? Well, when that happens at the third eye, then that awakens Shakti, who is at the root chakra, and then she is making her way up to her lover, Shiva. And she's burning through all the impurities and distortions and blocks in the lower three chakras. And when that happens, when those three lower chakras are cleared, then the heart activates, and that brings on the three chakras above the heart. This is a lot of ways a Kundalini activation. And I mean, that is right. But in a lot of ways, this is our experience in the awakening process. When we experience challenges, first, this is very foundational, but switch your mindset of everything is happening for you to you to with you. Most people only stop at things happening for you. But when you go that next step of things are happening with you, then you step into being a co-creator of your reality. So that is very important. And as you go about doing this, then you'll be able to navigate those different distortions, blockages, and anything else similar to that and associate them to your lower three chakras. So all of those challenges that we experience, let's get curious about them. Let's surrender to them. And by doing so, we can clear out our karmic debt so that we can make this awakening process a little bit more easeful and graceful. Well, in this episode, my guest, my new homie, Joel Drawbaugh, speaks about how he was doing the work for quite some time and meditation, different things like that. Then he had a spontaneous, based on how he described it, I'm calling it a Kundalini awakening, a Kundalini activation, and a tanning bed, y'all. He had a Kundalini awakening and a tanning bed. That's wild. That's nuts. So that's what we're talking about in this episode. And ever since then, he speaks with his angels, he sees visions, and that's because the heart opens, the heart gets activated, and then that brings on the other three chakras above the heart. So that's what this one is about. This episode is like going deep on all the things. I've had this podcast now for 6 years. Wow, that is awesome. And in the first 3 years, it was like every other episode, if not every single episode, it was conversations like this. And I've really morphed the podcast into a lot of different things over the past 3 years. But it's nice always to go super deep like this. So I had a ton of fun. Let me know what you guys thought about it. Let me know which of the subtopics in this episode you liked the most so that I can do more podcasts because I want to cater this to your interests. So reach out to me. I don't bite, and I would love to hear from you. So with that, enjoy this episode with Joel. What up, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. We are about to drop in with my homie Joel Drawbaugh, aka Aries. We'll talk about all that and more. Super stoked to connect with Joel deeper and connect you guys with him. But before we do, as always, we're going to drop in with just 3 breaths. So if you're doing anything where you can't close your eyes, you can always breathe with us. Just be mindful of that and don't close your eyes. And having said that, if you're in a place where you can just take a moment for yourself, I invite you to find a seat, sitting down, sitting straight up, and through the mouth, just sighing out. And through the nose, big inhale all the way up, letting the belly expand and bringing that breath all the way up. Sipping in a bit more at the top, sighing it out. Through the nose, big expansive inhale all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at top. Pausing here and just bringing awareness to that space between your eyebrows. And sighing it out. And one last one, big inhale all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at top. Hold. And sighing it out. All right, letting the breath return to its natural state and rhythm. And we are ready to jam on this podcast after grounding in. Joel, my dude, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you today?
Amazing.
Good?
Yeah, very good. Well, all the things you and I met in person about a week ago today, I would say, yeah, it was. And for everyone listening, it's funny because I speak at different events and things like that, travel the country, and I had a gig coming up in Florida. That's a long ways from California. So I was looking for a local photographer and videographer. Joel was the person that I ended up working with, and we started to connect. You were telling me about different spirituality stuff and how you're into the message. And then just after doing the event and chatting with you, we really hit off and we're talking about a lot of things. So with all of that kind of framed and tee up, super, super stoked to have you here.
I appreciate it. I love this. And your breath club, I do a lot of breath work in yoga, but hitting up on the breath club, I think it was 2 weeks ago was first time joining. It's taking up my yoga and my meditation up. I know breath is important about both of those, but being on that Zoom call, I kind of undervalued until I got up on it. And yeah, it was really cool. And now I do it every time at lunch. I'm trying to do it every morning, but and I love our little community on there where we chat back and forth. A couple of the people are already friends. It's like it's an asset I didn't expect.
Yeah, man. I'm so stoked to hear that as I'm building out the Breath Club. And for all of you listening, this wasn't anything I asked Joel to say or anything
No, he
like that.
didn't.
So
He
if you
didn't.
guys want to join, the best part is it's completely free. So, I mean, take advantage of that. Hit this podcast on pause or whatever you need to do. Go to the show notes and join the Breath Club. You won't be sorry that you did. Amazing community there. So, and the other thing too, I want to mention is like you do deep meditations and you get visualizations, you speak with archangels and angels and all the things. Talk with us about that a little bit.
Well, it's funny because I never called it breath work when it first started happening. And it was very similar when you started your journey around 2019, 2018. And the first, I've always felt this amazing like energy, like I'm clearing stuff, but it wasn't so pivotal or like life changing that I didn't get much credit until, and it sounds goofy. I was in a tanning booth after my workout. I did a little yoga. I went to a tanning booth. And you've got to stand there for 10 minutes. And all I did was focus on one, not being bored, but two, just deep breaths. And that's how I kind of, I guess, intuitively fell into breath work. But that
Mm.
was years ago. I didn't know I had a name. And that's when I started to find, like you said, I started seeing symbols and this amazing stuff. And it would change my outlook on everything for like hours, if not a whole day. It was all from, as silly as it sounds, from breathing the right way completely in a tanning booth.
Okay. We gotta unpack that because first off, at least now you live in Florida. Did you live in Florida at the time?
I did, and I know I get criticized by this, especially by Floridians,
No, I'm not.
but
I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to understand here. That's all.
no, the thing is I feel I'm happier with a certain amount of yoga, a certain amount of sleep, a certain amount of meditation, and I do find sunlight, uh, keeps me going. It keeps my serotonin up, and so if I'm working a lot, I'm doing other projects. I like to get 4 to 8 hours of direct sunlight per week, and sometimes I don't fit it in. And so when I've read, 10 minutes in a tanning booth is equal to about 4 hours of sunlight. So that's when
Wait,
I kind of
really?
leverage. That's what I've read. I don't know if it's true. Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, thank you for that disclaimer there. As now, like these days, who knows what's true with the evolution of AI? I mean, I can't tell what I'm seeing sometimes, a lot of times. But that said, with the, there's a lot of talk about infrared saunas and things like that. I would have never in my wildest imagination thought tanning beds that would like give you a good source of vitamin D, essentially, you know?
That's it. That's why I do it. Yep.
That's
I mean,
cool.
the real sun's the best way to go, but if you're out of time and you're weak, then you kind of fit it in.
So you're just chilling there in that tanning booth, just being like, oh, like, okay, this is boring. I'm a little claustrophobic. Let me connect with my breath. And then bam, is that what happened?
Pretty much. And I do the stand-up tanning booth, so you have those two handles up here.
Oh, cool.
And honestly, I do feel, I think most of us feel this great energy when we put our hands up, like victory.
True.
And
Yeah.
it was very close to that. And then once, of course, the feeling came on, I went straight to victory. I wasn't holding the handles anymore. But yeah, that's pretty much how it went down. And I
All
didn't
right.
tell
Well,
anyone for probably a year or two. I was almost embarrassed. Like, I don't know what that
mhm.
was. I don't know if I'm supposed to share this. And so it was funny. I kind of, went slow with it and before I shared it.
All right. I really want to like unpack this and set the scene here because you and I haven't talked about this. You mentioned it in passing, and I mean, we've hit on so many different topics that sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to go deep, and this is the opportunity to go deep on this specific one. Um, so you're in the tanning bed, and you before that didn't experience, I'm just going to call it this stuff, and then during that you did. Can you tell us a little bit more like what was that actual experience? What were you experiencing that you hadn't ever felt or touched on before?
Up until that point, I was probably my second year of meditation,
Okay.
where I was doing intense 30 minutes to 2 hours a day. I loved it. And I was also doing astral projection quite a bit.
Oh,
And
so
with
you were
that being
doing
said,
work. If you were doing
yeah,
astral projection, you were doing
yeah.
work. Yeah. Okay.
But I didn't expect anything like Tai Chi or Koi Gong or breath work. When I'm awake and I'm moving around, I'm always thought in my mind I had to be sedentary to have anything like kind of move around.
Mm.
Um, And with that being said, if there's anyone out there that says if you say you hate meditation, I said it for 10 years. you
Hmm.
have meditation, it takes a while. What I like to always say, and this is kind of my soapbox speech, um, it, meditation, we have running thoughts, everyone does, but it's like having a voicemail system in your head. And if you don't check your voicemail, when you go to meditate, you're gonna have 14,000 unread messages. And so the first few times you meditate, you're giving yourself permission to hit delete. You don't have to listen to the whole message, hit delete. Ultimately, you do get to a point, it might take weeks or months, depending on how long it's been since you sat with yourself. And then one day, all those voice messages are gone, and it's like that was it for me. It took me, I don't know how long, but long time to hate meditation. And when I found that space in between thoughts, that's when I found it. It was
Damn.
good.
That
Yep.
That's so good, and I love the way you describe it as a voicemail. I think sometimes every now and then there's metaphors that people use to describe things, and a lot of times like we hear the same thing over and over, like you gotta put your oxygen on mask first, right? Like that's a one that
Right.
we've all heard. I haven't heard this about the voicemail. Like that is one that I'm gonna borrow and tell other people and give you credit because I
Please
mean,
do. But
yeah,
I don't need
it's
the credit. I just
amazing.
want more people to meditate. And I always say,
Yeah.
and if they have the right response when I share it, which is 50-50, but when they do, I'm like, and when you finally get done with the voicemails, you finally find it. And I wait. If their eyes pop up, that means what? What is it? Like you
Mhm.
finally found that you are not your thoughts. You are your emotions. You're that space between them. And that's where you find the beauty. And
Yeah.
I'd say that because for 10 years, I hated meditation. Probably 7 years, I hated yoga. And when I finally found that silent spot, which took a while to get to, that's when everything started to change for me.
Amazing. And transitioning away a little bit from like your story and the evolution, and we might go back to that. We're just going to see where this takes us. But now I think it's a good time to kind of talk about what you and I were talking about offline last night, which was like the different archetypes. And there's one that's like the Red Witch from Alice
Red
in
Queen,
Wonderland. Red Queen,
Red
that's
Queen.
it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So tell us a little about this because I thought this was super insightful.
And I base a lot of it on Carl Jung's concepts of internal archetypes. You have the inner teen, inner child, critical parent. And I love Carl Jung's work. He's so far out there. But before I got into the spirituality and leaving my body, for entertainment or exploration, I was in sales. I've been in sales forever. And I noticed one thing in sales is you always only have so many personality types when you're on the phone or in person. And so in sales, we have different names for each personality, and that helps you navigate, find solutions, and a compromise. As I've gone more into more personal development and spirituality, um, I notice people would come into my life that rub me wrong, where I feel like they hurt me, and it's the same personality but a different face. And that's when I started to, but for my sales concepts, I took it to personal development. And the Red Queen, a friend actually brought it up maybe 2 months ago. We had a friend in common. She was very controlling. She would love bomb a lot, but the bottom line is everyone has to do the same thing in a group. And if you don't, you get berated, you get outed, a lot of drama. And eventually, once my friend made the joke, Red Queen, thinking of Alice in Wonderland, off with her head. And I'm like, that's it. And then once we were able to unpack that and give it a label, then we could stop like ruminating about it and keep it explaining how wrong she is and how she took
Mhm.
advantage of the group. And we go, oh, it's a Red Queen. Okay, done. What are we going to talk about next? Let's talk about something beautiful. It's like, get it over with.
Yeah. So, that's a really good example. You start to associate, and you just went over, like, kind of glossed over a big topic. And so, the archetypes. You mentioned that there's 12 different one. Carolyn Mace goes extensively into archetypes, as you mentioned, Carl Jung and many others as well. One of the things that I want to talk about is what are these archetypes, and then also, in addition to that, a little bit more tangible tools that we can use to relate with these archetypes in real time when we notice it and for long-term effects as well. So tell us a little bit more about like what archetypes are.
Okay, and I'm glad you asked that detailed question. And when we first started, before we started recording this, I love when you ask me what topics are off limits, and I'm like,
Mhm.
none. And the fact you asked it, I got super excited. Oh, no. So basically, what I have found through that, I do believe they're angels, and I believe they talk to all of us all the time. It takes a little patience to start listening, but there's ultimately one human mind. Um, as this human mind's been growing and developing, every time there's a lesson that's too hard for, let's say, one to learn, it splits off. When we judge someone, we can't forgive them. We want revenge, or even if we can't love ourselves. And that's if you believe in reincarnation, which I do, it'll split those personalities. So if you had a tragic, let's say you hate your mother because she wouldn't let you go to the prom or something, then you couldn't let that go. You held the resentment for your whole life. And then after, you're like, okay, this was too much for this human. So now we're going to split this into 6 different human experiences with that same particular lesson. Of course, there's going to be more than one lesson. There's hundreds and thousands of them. But ultimately, that's what creates the illusion that the one mind, the one human mind, looks like 9 billion human minds. And within that group, they categorize into 12 categories. And I didn't know this until I was talking to a good witch friend of mine who's really deep diving in astrology. She goes, "Oh yeah, that makes sense because the astrological signs." I'm like, I never saw that connection. I knew there was 12. I mean, I saw the message of 12, but I didn't notice that. Oh yeah, duh. And then you go deeper into, I believe Buddha was, if I remember right, he had 12 followers. Jesus had 12 followers, and I don't have the list in front of me, but there are many ancient histories of the masters who usually had 12. And I think ultimately it's the idea that we split them up. And for me, I'll tell you right now, Sam, for me, and I found for most people of the 12, I have 3 that I believe are my nemesis, or the ones I'm supposed to learn the most forgiveness.
Yeah.
I have 3 that are allies, and then the rest are kind of like go back and forth accordingly. But when you run into people, and you are one of them, Sam, you remind me of quite a few people. I'm like, I know this guy. I already know him. It's like as you talk, you're confirming it, but I'm like, yeah, I already know. I already know. I'm so glad. So it's really cool.
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by emotions and unsure how to move through them? Sam created the Breath Club to help you find calm and clarity. In this free online community, Sam teaches how to regulate your nervous system through breathwork and process emotions effectively. Did you know that most emotions only last 90 seconds when you fully allow yourself to feel them? This is called the 90-second rule, and it's a powerful tool backed by science for emotional healing. Each week, Sam hosts live calls to guide breathwork practices and create real connection. You'll also get access to an online course and pre-recorded breathwork videos. The link to join is in the show notes.
So I have to ask then, which archetype am I? I hope not the Red Queen.
Well, your archetype doesn't cause me problems. I've only named like, I know, but it was a good question. It's a fair question. I've only named like 7. I think I had 3 or 4 afloat, but if they're not like a bane of my existence, obviously I don't really name them. It's like, it's not on top of my list.
No, yeah, I was joking about that, but I am curious, like what category would you put my personality or soul traits under?
Okay. This is gonna get personal.
Yeah, let's do it. That's what we're here for.
Okay. So you are a giver, yet your personality, your expectation of excellence for yourself exceeds just a little bit more than it does others, but you still expect excellence. If someone's going to, what's the word, be lazy and try to take shortcuts, you're going to give them a lot of chances, but at the same time, you're going to eventually cut them loose. And then 20 or 30% of the time, when you do cut them loose, maybe even more, depends where you're at, you're going to feel guilty about having to do the right thing. And then this will continually make you more compassionate towards others, and sometimes leaning towards less compassion to yourself, that you couldn't be a part of that glue for everyone. And then, yeah, so your archetype doesn't ever like become a pain in my ass. So I never really mentioned it or gave it a lit name.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, I got it. Yeah, and it's funny that all of that resonates, and it's funny you use the word excellence because I recently did a NLP master practitioner training, and they had this amazing story of Kobe and how he expected everything you're describing is Kobe, by the way, in a lot of ways, right? Think about how he treated his teammates and whatnot, at least legends. I wasn't there, so I can't confirm or deny. But that said, they were talking about Kobe with his motto is excellence every single day. You have to be excellent. I forget what the quote was, but it's like you can't be excellent part of the time. You have to be excellent every day. So in NLP, we did a board break where on one side you put limiting beliefs and the other side you put like what you're manifesting of who you're becoming. So I literally wrote on the other side, excellent every day like Kobe, and that board's in my room. So excellent
I
just
love that.
recently has been part of my life.
I
Yeah.
love that. I remember a quote. It was actually from a poem. Don't remember which one. And it was, every day your best is different.
Mm.
And so yeah, when you're trying to go after excellence, some days your best is down here, other days up here. But if you're still striving, then that's what I consider excellence. Even though it's
That
you could go up down.
That brings up a really good point. You wrote this in the WhatsApp community for our online community, the Breath Club, this morning, kind of something with you with breath work. And then I chimed in as well. Like, I've 2 weeks straight, maybe three, I've done breath work every single day, like especially those days I didn't want to. And today, the day of this recording, it's the first day it's rained in Santa Cruz for a while now. We were having summer weather where I didn't need a tanning bed, you know what I mean? But the rain is back. So there was that. It's a Friday morning, and I just woke up being like, I don't want to do anything today. Nothing was on my calendar either till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 5 o'clock on a Friday. And I'm like, oh, when do I ever have scheduled calls on Fridays in the afternoon? Right. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to treat myself because it's going to be a busy weekend of work and other things. And I'm just going to be lazy and I'm not going to do my breath work. And what I talk about a lot is this concept of humaning as it relates to the spiritual journey. When we approach our mindful or spiritual practices like a to-do list, then we're in our masculine, right? And
Hoorah. I love that topic. Love that topic.
Okay, cool. We'll unpack it. So I'll just finish this thought. I know I'm rambling, but
No, I
basically,
like it. No, I like it, but I had to say something because I really like that topic.
yeah. When I had to learn this early on my journey, and then it was like, if doing the thing, breath work or whatever, into checklist is going to get me to the being that I want, sure, if I'm fully in there. But if I'm just crossing it off, then I'm in my doing, and a lot of times I will be sitting in meditation, uncomfortable. To your point, so wrapping this up with a bow, like the concept of excellence and Kobe being like excellent every day, like. I still also have my personal beliefs of being part of what excellence is. And my term of definition is embodiment for my beliefs. Kobe was out of balance in the way he approached things from what I know for how I want to show up. Did he get the results? Absolutely. I'm not striving for those results. I'm striving for something different. So it's my version of excellence. But anyways, yeah.
That's right.
I'm getting fired up.
No, I love it. I love it, man. I love it. Now, by the way, who's Kobe?
You're joking.
I'm not.
You don't know who Kobe Bryant is?
Oh, Kobe Bryant. You said Kobe. I don't watch a lot of sports. I know who Kobe Bryant is. I forgot.
Man, I respect that of you so much. That's amazing. I can't even fathom being so like in my own element and world of not knowing who Kobe or like Michael Jordan are.
But let me tell you what it is. One, I don't.
That's
I
cool.
try to do everything I can to check out of the system, I guess. Which
it's
not always a strength, but I like it. But I went to Florida State. I went to every game. I had a good time, and it took me to about 2 or 3 years after graduation to realize that I don't like football. I don't like watching sports. I only like the socialization. And so once I finished college, I'm like, and I was kind of done. And then now, especially with all my meditation and my tree hugging, it's like, to me, I was like, that's competitive. It's like, why can't they build something beautiful together? I sound like totally like a tree hugger, but for me, it's hard to watch sports. It's like human against human. It rubs me wrong.
Dude, I gave up sports in 2019 when I started down this path, and I was like disowned from my best friends, and I didn't speak for them for like 2 years. Like, and now we're tight. I mean, I barely ever see them or talk to them, but like we're all good. But they just didn't understand like the space I needed to not be in a fantasy football league, for Christ's sake, I never say Christ's sake. I don't know why that came out. Anyways, you said earlier, I love this topic. Which specific point, and let's unpack that a bit.
Which one? The masculine mindset?
I think so. And that might have been what you were saying. Yeah. I love this too. Or just knowing when you're in your being versus doing.
And I don't think I've ever thought of it quite like that, but you're right. The masculine mindset has a to-do list.
Yeah.
And to a degree, when it comes to this, physical world, when you just do something like going to the gym, I don't feel good today, but you go anyway. To a degree, you do get some result. But I feel that when we listen to our intuition and our feminine side, which doesn't get enough credit, we can take that day off, give ourselves permission, the next day be fully into it. And that workout that we do with everything is worth 3 or 4 times as much. And a lot of times the masculine mind doesn't take an evaluation of our internal needs and a long-term goal. So keeping them both together is important, but and I mentioned earlier, and I'm so glad you liked it. Well, too often when we use the masculine mind, it's all about discipline and that checkbox, like you were saying about doing the breath work. Ultimately, in a weird way, if we just listen to that checkbox in the masculine mind, we're kind of worshiping suffering. The more I suffer, the more success I'll get. And I love your story when I first heard your background and you talked about, I think it was Swag was your old business. And I did product development too, and back, a little bit long before that. But I built a business, had a great income. I worked 5-10 hours a week. All my virtual assistants, employees were via email. I thought it was perfect. And I just kept checking off, made money. And I used the masculine mind so much back then that no matter how much I invested or had rental properties, I was depressed, dude. I was married. I shouldn't have been depressed. I had married. I was with kids. It didn't make any sense. And I think back then, my masculine mind of check money. Okay, now vacation. I was never really taking an internal assessment of what my body needed, what I needed. I was just looking at that checkbox, and it was lonely. And one thing, and tell me if you felt this way too. The hardest thing after my probably first year of depression, I was in denial. Second, third, I was aware. But as I would express with some close friends, and they knew I made more money than them, and I had complete freedom of my time. When you do have financial independence and you make your own schedule, when you try and reach out to those people who don't, they don't feel bad for you. Like, oh, whatever, dude, you've got a boat, whatever, man. It's like you make your own. And I felt more alone. It's like I wasn't even allowed to connect with people unless eventually I hired a therapist, because I realized my friends just couldn't get it. But when most people only measure money and I guess freedom of time, and you have that, then when you feel depressed, they kind of roll their eyes at you, like, whatever. And that was about year 3. I started to really put that together, and that's when I realized my perfect dream business I put together is killing me. It was brutal.
Thank you for sharing. And we have such similar parallels and stories and archetypes there. I kind of think of that as an archetype,
Yeah.
and I think this is a perfect segue to get back into archetypes and kind of how they're mirroring things and also how to work with them. Because to answer your question, hearing you speak, I'm like, I'm doing what I teach not to do. Instead of focusing on my breath so I could be present with what you're saying, I'm starting to think of other things of my time and then losing track, right? But if you focus on your breath, this, and the inhales and exhales, you can be more present with the other person. That said, you did ask me a question, so I went there. And you mentioned that for you, they didn't really have compassion when you reached out and needed support. And as I reflect back, thinking about 2019, when I was going through my numbing depression, having just reached 7 figures, working less than 4 hours a day, very similar to you. And I remember that there were certain people I would reach out to. So we could call it not knowing that I was connected to my intuition or whatever, but or maybe it was intentional, but I do remember having Palvinder in my corner helping me out with meditation and those 2 a.m. nights when I felt like I was going to do something crazy, not crazy, but like crazy for me or whatever, just something not smart. Mainly having to do with my ex, like nothing wild, just like things like that.
I've been
Or
there before. I've been there.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure, like I've been watching some weird movies like Batman movies recently and like the Joker and all that. And I'm like, okay, I want to make sure like someone listening to this doesn't get twisted. That's
You're
the
right.
only reason why I said it. Yeah.
You're
I've been
right.
watching some weird things that are playing in my psyche. So I reached out to my homie Palvinder, helped me with like Eckhart Tolle, teaching me about him and listening to Law One, and then Charlie Johnson, my meditation teacher. Like I had a few people that could hold space for me for sure. But I don't remember talking to the people that couldn't. Maybe I tried to open it up and then the conversation got denied. So then I never went there again,
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty subtle. It is pretty subtle. But I mean, the good thing is it made me start working on myself more. and seeing a therapist. And up until that point, well, I guess year 2 or 3, when I noticed my denial of depression was gone, then I stopped. I've always been an avid reader since I was like 19, 20, maybe younger, but I only read about making money, to be honest. Even, you ever read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
I'm pretty sure I read it, but obviously I know about it and all that. Yeah.
And I read it a few times in my 20s, and eventually, if I remember right, three of the chapters about developing stuff that I perceived as making me money. So after the 5th or 6th time I read the book, I took out the 4 habits of like community and family engagement, because I'm like, oh no, I only care about money. I literally destroyed the theory of the book because I wanted to make more money. And I didn't realize that until I was in my 40s. Yeah, it was funny.
It's so funny. Yeah. That goes back to like the subconscious mind and delete, distort, and generalize, right? Like, don't need that. That's not for me, you know?
Yeah, that's right. I know this guy wrote this book for balance, but I don't want balance. I only want this. And so I took the purpose of the book and twisted it all around. But
I can relate. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we're talking about 7 habits of highly effective people, and just kind of going through your spiritual journey. It took you 3 years to really surrender, if you will, and then at that point you went deeper. So going back to the archetypes, then you know, I don't know as much as you, or haven't retained or done the deep dive of what the exact archetypes are. In fact, now that I'm putting it together, like I've listened to Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Mace like 3 times, and she talks about archetypes, and every time she talks about archetypes, I just kind of daydream, you know? So it's your point of like 7 habits of successful people, your experience with that book. I say a lot of times, like, I'm of the archetype of someone who is chasing success, then when they experience success, realize there's gotta be something more life, and then gets into spirituality. I think there's a lot of different archetypes that get into like this sort of work. And another would be like someone that is processing PTSD, and they're like totally ready now to look at those things, or whatever it might be. And that's kind of the way I've looked at archetypes. But tell us a little bit more, because you've told us about the Red Queen, and I think a couple more, but I know you have 3 that are allies and 3 that are nemesis. So maybe let's start there with those 6.
Okay, so you have the controllers. Those are the people that are identified as narcissists. So let me see if I can remember all 3. I have this written down somewhere. But you have the controller.
Or just top of head. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Sure. But the controller, which is actually part of a 3 group, and then you have the controller rapist, the controller, I guess I call him a thief. I have a better word for that, and the controller complacent. And they're basically kind of the small self, meaning they need to, whatever they don't take or get from the world, someone else is going to take from them. Therefore, you have to control, punish, and manipulate others to ensure that you survive and grow. Now, what's interesting is just like Carl Jung's inner child arc. He's at the inner child, inner teen, critical parent. What makes it a little complicated, Sam, is that each one of us has pretty much all these archetypes in us. Have you ever been around someone and you behave, like, let's say there's an argument, disagreement, and when they walk away, like, I did this and responded that way. I never do that. And I'm sure you've had that before. And you're kind of second guessing yourself. Do I know myself? How could that happen? But typically, when it comes to soul contracts, you're I don't like the word soul, but we'll use the word soul. Your soul and their soul are still trying to figure out a certain lesson. And sometimes you only need to see each other for 10 minutes. It could be some jerk you saw at the grocery store. But at that point, for you to finish that particular lesson, you'll have an archetype that comes out of you for 90 seconds that you probably only see every 2 years. But that was actually necessary for that little interaction. And the more we fight that, and the more we hate that part of it, I believe I have found that shortly after, usually within 3-month period, that particular archetype that I'm hating myself for, those people will start coming to my life, whether it's business, friendship, or relationships. So the more I can forgive myself and forgive others, then it kind of doesn't pull them back in, which is super challenging.
Yeah. How do you do that then?
Have you ever heard of it? Okay, so I love angels.
Mhm.
Oh, I never shared this with you.
Okay.
I love that we can talk about anything here. It's probably about 3 years ago. For 3 years, I would consider myself a demonologist. So I worked with a lot.
Demonologist.
Correct. A
All right,
demonologist.
here we
Yeah.
go.
I know. You ready?
Yeah, let's
So
do it.
after my divorce and for a brief time, I switched from entrepreneurs into business because I was like working on myself. And of course we do shadow work. And after I did my first round or two of shadow work the first year, I realized there was more than one layer. It's like the first, I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but the first round of shadow work I did, like, yeah, I did it. Yeah. And then like
Mhm.
2 months later, another layer comes and you're like, that's not fair. So I decided, which I had to do, um, I'm going to go as deep as possible. If there's 800 layers of shadow I got to work on, I'm going to knock them all out back to back until I'm done. So that's when I went into demonology. And of course, I started running into people. I used to go on Reddit and Supernatural, whatever, and meet people in person. And you can, when your vibration's there, you can find probably 2 or 3 people a week to claim that they're possessed, and then you work with them. And the more you do it, the more you encounter what I call the legions as well as the hordes. They're different forms of demons. The good news is after 3 years, I could go on and on about demonology and my experiences. It's supernatural. Basically, everything you've ever seen on TV and most of the stuff you've read in books is all real.
Mhm.
It's really wild. And at first, it was very exciting. But what I noticed, and I found a great book called The Angel Experiment. It got me out of demonology. Um, and once I realized by year 3 that yes, I was getting better and I can identify, look across the room and see that person has 2 legions and 2 hordes, this person, that person. And back then, if they had a legion or a horde that I didn't know by just looking across the room, I was compelled to go investigate, which always brought, some pretty serious weird stuff. But in the end, I was super hungry for knowledge and experience. But then I realized that the more you study something, the one who seeks always finds. So if
Mm.
you're seeking demons, if you're seeking to help people with demons, then they continually show up more and more. So when I found the book Angel Experiment, it was a hard month or whatever, and I picked that up and I realized shortly, like halfway through the book, oh, I can stop experiencing all these weird, crazy things 3 or 4 times a week with all these people if I change what I seek. And then from
Mm.
there, that's when I started, and I still do. I really focused on angels. But to answer your question, I know I went in a circle there. But to answer your question, have you ever heard of an angel called Metatron?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. And Metatron, I think, perfected it. Most of the legends and some of the Kabbalahs say that Metatron was the youngest and the wisest angel, which is
Hmm.
a contradiction. In fact, I think even the Bible says that he was the right hand or the mouth of God. Um, if you go into Kabbalah, it states that Metatron has already lived every human experience that has lived, does live, and will live. So he's already gone through every tribulation. And if from time to time he channels through, and I've seen other people channel him, Metatron can't stop laughing. Like right now, he sounds almost like Santa Claus when he inhales and exhales.
Mhm.
And to deal with those archetypes when they keep coming towards you and it frustrates you, it's really laughing. I mean, ultimately,
Mhm.
um, taking it light, not taking it serious, but laughing, which sounds so simple, but it's not.
That's the process of transmutation, transformation, alchemy, and any of these things, right? We need to get to that higher frequency, whether it's love, joy, or straight up laughter. And it feels like a lot of times it's laughter. And excuse me for any of you listening that are very familiar with David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, because I'm not sure exactly which one would be the highest at this moment. Well, there's a lot of things you mentioned there, and I wrote down Kabbalah because I would love to just do another podcast with you to talk about that because we don't have time to get into all of that. Um, Metatron, yeah, Metatron's cube, and then I am Jewish, and you mentioned the Kabbalah and Metatron. Who is Metatron in like Judaism again related to?
And that's interesting. Well, have you ever heard of Dr. Greg Brennan? He's a
Greg
neurobiologist.
Braden?
Braden, that's it, Braden.
Braden. Yeah, I love Greg Braden. Yeah.
And he's got a couple documentaries where he studies the evolution of the Bible, and I believe in Quran. And the oldest Bible, if I remember right, that he breaks down is 1,700 years old. what I love, I'm not deflecting your question, but I believe that some of the books that what's the Jewish Bible? It's called the Quran, no, Turan. What's it called? Torah.
The Torah, yeah,
Torah, that's
Torah,
it, Torah.
yeah.
And angels over the last 700 years have been removed. There's only 7 angels mentioned in the Bible now, where if you go back 800 years ago, there was like 26. You go back further, there was like over 100. And so it's kind of been edited down. I think to keep it simple and maybe a little manipulation, but I think Metatron is still mentioned in the Bible. I honestly can't remember if the
It
current
doesn't
edition.
matter.
Yeah.
There was something else I want to ask. I don't know why I asked about that. And, for the sake of time and everything else, we'll move
Okay.
on from there. So demonology. So you're doing this thing where, did I hear you right that you would go onto Reddit and you would find like basically people to clear entities?
Yes.
So what was your intention with that?
I
I
wanted
mean,
to, yeah, I wanted to learn about demon. What do you mean? I wanted to learn about demons, and the best way too was to help others with theirs, so I could work on my own shadow.
oh, okay. So you knew that you had some attachments on you. That's what got you into like becoming a demonologist then.
Correct. And I kind of see a shadow, and in fact, whether if I believed it or not, which I think to a degree we all do. Um, okay, so this is another. So I believe angelic beings. They live obviously outside of time and space, but most of us humans, by our beliefs, were brought up is that angels are the good guys, demons are the bad guys. Where I believe and see that a demon is the left hand of an angelic being, and what we perceive as an angel is the right hand. So whenever we're on our lessons, obviously you're gonna get this love and compassion, and then if you're just not listening, whatever, they have to tap you a little bit with the left hand. So even though to us humans it appears that there's a good guy, that bad guy, and they're separate, it's actually one angelic being with 2 hands.
Does that equate to the feminine and masculine, the archetypal energies? Yeah.
Yes, I do. I believe so. That's how I see it.
Which one would, I'm not going to ask that
No, no,
question.
no, no. You can go ahead and ask it because it seems like a loaded question, but it's not. If you look at the yogis from Hindi, which
Yeah.
breaks down most of the conscious errors of civilization, it's flip flops. I think it's 6,000 or every 8,000 years they flip flop. So right now, yes, masculine is considered more toxic and more controlling, more punishing. But if you would have went back, according to the yogis, it went back 8,000 years, it was flip flop. So I know right now we're like trying to, pick sides and this is good or bad, but we're both going like this every 8,000 years.
If you're looking for a powerful and transformative experience for your next event, consider bringing in Sam Kabert as a keynote speaker. Sam's message of soul life balance and his expertise in mental health and mindfulness resonate deeply with audiences. He not only inspires with his story, but also offers practical tools like breathwork to help attendees regulate their emotions and reconnect with themselves. You can even have Sam lead a guided breathwork journey, creating a truly unforgettable experience. To learn more or book Sam for your event, check out the link in the show notes to book a call with Sam now.
Right now,
Yeah, another thing keep in mind too is it's an archetype like yin, yang, or yang. It's not gender associated. It has nothing to do with human form. And then we take the archetypal energy and then we say masculine and feminine qualities. And sometimes people are talking about masculine and feminine qualities for a human, which can be very different than the archetypal energies.
100%. And one thing I'm just starting to see now in the last year, and I discovered, because I did touch the divine feminine hit me really hard. Matter of fact, I was even married back then. I went celibate for a year because I was discovering the divine feminine and doing astral projection, all kinds of stuff. Wasn't great for my marriage, but for me, it was really good. And the one thing that I learned was after I've explored, I guess I felt comfortable within myself about the divine feminine. I found something only a few people now starting to talk about, the divine masculine. And it wasn't until about a year ago this is being talked about. And it's got me real excited that it's popping up.
Yeah, the divine masculine is just as important. I mean, I kind of think of the words that people use are divine feminine, divine masculine, some other stuff too sometimes. But I think about balanced, like balanced masculine and balanced feminine. And that's kind of the way, personally, yin and yang, right? The yang's got the
Yeah.
yin in it and the yin's got the yang in it, right? And we're intertwined
Yes.
and all that. So with archetypes, just to get back to this a little bit, because we're talking about like how some people could have, oh, we do need to finish that loop with demonology. So you got down the demonology because you've felt you had an attachment, you got rid of it for yourself, and then you helped other people to get rid of them. Now, are you like totally clear? Do they kind of come back? And if they come back, then what do you do?
Well, I think it's like any weakness. God, I could talk about the how demons work forever, but
That's
to a degree,
another
you
podcast.
gotta you can, if you play nice or you don't say, "Hey, you're the bad guy, and you and me are odds." One of the things I've noticed with some people do exorcisms, even some of our traditional belief systems, the one thing they say, we're going to cast the demon out, we're going to do this, we're going to bring this weapon. The one thing demons love more than anything ever is a battle. So what
Mm,
happens, and I've worked, a lot of people I worked with on exorcisms, they were eventually, after the second or third failed attempt of an exorcism, the church, and there's all the names of churches, not just one, they would actually kick them out and say, the devil's got you, we can't help you. And ultimately, what I found is that when you push him out, yes, the demon goes away, but he's not going away because necessarily you scared him away. He's going to get some friends. He goes, "This is the best battle you've ever seen. You guys got to come check this out." And so then when it comes back, it actually brings some friends. The one thing demons hate, well, it makes obvious sense, is love and acceptance. And when you do that, it passes. You basically starve it out until it goes somewhere else.
and it's
And
so fat. Go ahead, yeah.
no, you go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Well, it's shadow work, right? Because
Yeah.
it just like the evolution of this podcast 6 years ago, the tagline was soul seeking, very much like moving forward. I mean, sorry, the tagline was a journey of self discovery. That's what it was. And with that, I named the podcast Soul Seeker, like seeking. Then next was, a journey of acceptance. No, a journey of remembering was the second tagline about 2 years later, because it was going from like outward seeking outwardly to be like, oh, it's a softening, it's coming to me, I'm remembering. And just last year, the year before, I forget because time's moving by so fast, the new tagline for the podcast, the current one, is a journey of acceptance.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
right. Yeah. Because to your point, everything you're talking about, like we can't meet resistance with resistance. So, I've been a part of a lot of exorcisms too through my time with assisting in Bufo ceremonies, toad medicine. You see some exorcisms from time to time, right? And
Yeah.
I definitely have had my own little battles with entities, not like straight up, like I've known, but you could tell me they were on me and I could feel something is off. But to your point, you come back to self compassion, self love, unconditional love, raising your vibration. And then also, if you are someone that's more like Joel and less like me, and you're working with them, then you send them back to the light. You work with it with light and love. You don't go against it. So I think that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. That's cool.
It is funny, but I love how your name changes with your podcast. I imagine as creators, we
Gotta.
all do this. When we change the name, we almost feel like we're portraying our direction. But that evolution, I think, is the most important. With that's another side note. That's why I like alter egos. And my daughter, by the way, she's 11. She's adorable.
Mhm.
Her name's Ava, but about a year or two ago, she wants to go by Rain, and of course, she spelled it any way she wanted. But I totally respect that. It's like you are given a name, but we have a certain limiting belief when someone gives you something. Now you got to always be that person. So the
Mm.
fact that your podcast changed, I think, is evidence that it's evolving.
Good connection. Yeah.
Yeah, it's evolving. And some people would think that it's looking for direction. It's I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just the tagline too, but it does make a big difference. So, everything we're talking about, this is a great get to know you podcast, Joel. I tell people a lot. Actually, no, I don't tell people a lot. The guests that come on the show that we have a really good rapport and we do kind of cover a lot of ground like you and I did here today. Then with those people, I tell them a lot that hey, we gotta do this again because this was good for you and I to build this rapport. It's great for the listeners to hear more about you and kind of like a bird's eye view, but we'll do some different deep dives over time. I'm sure we'll get into the Kabbalah, demonology more because that's super fascinating and all the other topics. But Joel, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you if they feel like, you know, maybe they have an attachment or they want to work with you or whatever it is? If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Instagram, Divine Dragon 1148.
You got it. Cool. So that's in
And
the show notes.
and just, you know, and it's funny, you know what? Yeah, I know a lot about demonology. It's not as, oh God, it's a long story. But if someone does have an issue, I can point in the right direction. I
Yeah.
know, yeah, it's taking me a little courage because I'm a part of this. Whenever we move forward, I guess a part of me is worried that I'll go back that direction. But I know that's not true. I'm not the person I was 3 years ago.
Dude, I feel you too. Like, it's funny. I was working with a client yesterday and somehow archons came up and I'm like, whoa, that's not something that's come up in a while. And I go, well, typically I don't bring up like dark entities or dispelling Watiko or reptilians and all this unless it just kind of comes up, especially like with my clients. I'm like, all right, well, it came up. So I gave her the similar disclaimer that it's like, okay, now it's coming up. It'll probably come back up more for both of us, and
That's
that's not a thing to avoid. That's a thing to embrace. What we were just saying, you know, saying it with love. So it's funny that we're having this conversation. I'm like, yeah, that actually did come up yesterday, but very cool.
It must be a common lesson we're both trying to realize it, and again, it's like a litmus test for our progression. It's like we're not the same as we were.
Dude, I'm just going to put this here. Today's January 31st, 2025 for everyone listening. And a few weeks ago, we had the fires in LA. I'm a California guy. I have ties to LA. A few days ago, we had, maybe yesterday, 2 days ago, we had a plane crash with a Black Hawk helicopter in DC. And then here we are today, just a few hours ago. I don't even know the details, anything. It just happened a couple of hours ago. There's a plane crash in Pennsylvania. There's weird stuff going on in the collective consciousness, period.
Yeah, I didn't know about that last one.
Yeah. Anyways, Joel, amazing to have you on the podcast. This has been so much fun, my dude. And we will do this again soon. I will reach out to you offline. Everyone listening, thank you guys so much. And if you want to go deeper on anything, just check out the show notes.
All right. It was awesome. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. And if you did, please share this podcast directly. Just share the link directly with a friend. It helps the podcast to grow. It furthers our mission of raising the collective consciousness from the fallen state. So honestly, like the easiest thing you can do to give back to the pod is to pay it forward. Because the more people that listen to whether it's my podcast or other podcasts like this that are all about ascension and raising the consciousness, well, that helps humanity. So the best thing you can do is pay it forward. With that, I will see you on the next episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Soltara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seeker.